self-paced CAI approach, or CMI even. But in the school system, the teacher can't spread them that far. So she may have 2 groups in math. I know she has 3 groups in reading. How do I know? Because the birds were.
Right.
All right.
You're the robins or you're the canaries, right?
So
yeah, right.
I focused on reading and I did the math, but I was mainly in a groups that were achieving. So I didn't worry, but we had kids in that class, I'm sure, that were way behind. Right. But they weren't behind.
Right.
They were not behind, really.
Right.
Because there was no way for the teacher to have 3 reading groups because she only had an hour. That's 20 minutes a group. So we were 30, we were actually 42 kids when I went to school. 6 rows of 7 kids, 1 teacher.
And so that would be called a crowded classroom today, but you turned out all right.
But that's all we did. I mean, we moved. But some kids moved from the 1 level that I was at to a 2 level the next year. And maybe even a 3, it was 1, 3, 2, that's how it went. So they would be in a 3 level and in a 2 level, and those were the kids that were drifting behind. So rather than fail them, they worked more slowly. In math, they had a different book. But they also had social studies and science in projects. But they didn't have the value of the 1 group.
So even in your class of 42, there was some differentiation going on?
To the extent that teachers allowed it.
Right.
But they had to allow it primarily because the kids couldn't keep up. So even in my group, there was the 3 groups. And this group did what they could do in the time frames that they were given. In math, there were 2 groups.
And I guess there may have been some stigma among the kids.
Yeah, oh no, you knew who the bright kids were.
And you might want to move up, and some people just kind of lay back. Well, I'm in the 2nd group. I'm just not going to really push it.
The advantage of this, if it's done well, of a project group, is I can take a slower student who's not as good as the other 2, let's say, in this little group, and make sure that student has assignments that fit into what the group is going.
So he's part of the team.
That's
We
right.
need somebody to compile that table.
Well,
He might not know what the numbers mean, but we have to put him in the right boxes.
Or you instead of you going and searching through Google, we got 3 or 4 things we'd like you to read.
Right.
And then we're going
Because search skills might be too difficult for the kid.
Exactly. Or the reading level may be such that we give him an assignment that can feed in at a level that he can operate.
It might be a lower level reading, but he's reading about how this impacts a country in Africa, and that brings in, because the group is looking around the world, and he's participating in the
Or he's a
research.
kid who really likes animals. So we can talk about, in our little group, we can talk about the animals that are in that, and why don't you do that for us? Why don't you go and see how many animals living in the wilds of this little area that we're talking about? Or what foods are they getting from the various plants and animals in the environment?
So differentiation does not mean segregation.
No.
Which is usually what people think of when you have 2 tracks.
Well, if you got 2, 3 different classes, that's segregating.
But within the same classroom, you have the 3 birds.
Right.
You could have projects that bring the members of each bird together.
Yeah, you have to work at that.
Yeah.
That's where the teacher comes in. So she has the option, or he has the option, of making the groups purposefully, knowing the backgrounds of the kids, or allowing the students to work with their friends. It depends on how well she knows the students, etc. That's the advantage of students staying with kids for periods of time.
Yes. the whole concept that Littke has of one teacher for 4 years, integration and knowing the kid.
Yeah. You know the kids. I knew the kids of the class of 57 because I got them for 5 years.
Right.
5 years, 8th grade through 12th grade.
And this goes back to administration. What do you do to make sure that teacher stays there for 5 years?
Well, you can't guarantee it, but it's a teacher that the students select because they like it or him, and the teacher's willing to put in the time because there's no extra money to be a class advisor in the social milieu of the class.
But as a teacher, I find it easier in my lesson plannings to be creating 15 lessons rather than one generic to meet everybody's needs.
You can't look in the mirror and think they're all like you.
Right.
They're not like you.
No. This is what worked for me, so therefore everybody's going to do that. That was how I started.
Not only that, they're not. They have. You don't have. You're a different kind of beast. You're searching all the time. So you're a reader. All the books you carry, you float around. You're inquisitive. It's not fair to judge teachers like you.
And yet I went through an evolution.
I only mentioned this piece of the evolution.
Right. If I could go back, it would be instructive if I could recreate the level of non-differentiation that I imposed on my students when I was a beginning teacher, because then the beginning teacher could see there's hope for me to learn these skills. There's such a prejudice that teachers are born. I'm sure in your career you've seen born teachers. But I firmly believe that teachers can be made.
Teachers can be made, violinists can be made, but the Heifetzes,
No.
that's the difference.
Right.
There are different. Most kids go into teaching because they feel they love kids and they think they can interact with children, etc. But that's what they go in with. But they're 18, 22 years old now. And then they become 25. New pressures. I want to get married. I want to find a husband. So I'm not going to spend my time reading books. I'm going to try to socialize out in a world where I can meet somebody. So that's where they go. Then they get married.
They have less time for their lesson planning. Of course, in their beginning lesson planning, they're spending way too much time.
That's exactly right. They're over-planning.
Right.
They're over-planning.
Right.
I remember putting notes all over the boards. The mistake we make also, which I made, I was a biochemist and I went into teaching, did that MIT, okay? I wanted to teach them all I knew in 1 year.
Which took you 12 years.
12 years or whatever the hell it took me.
But, I'll make it easy for them. Right? I'll get it all. They'll be ready.
So I was preaching and I was writing and I was just, and we used Moon Man and Otto, which was a tough book, that thick. It didn't take me long.
But you went through that, and that helped you become the philosopher that you are.
Yeah, it made me come down in expectation.
Right.
I taught one summer in Columbia. I started off with a book. And these were summer teachers who came to Columbia University, getting 3 credits for the class in environmental science. And I started off with a book. It only took me 1 week, and I realized they weren't going to get this book.
Oh.
No way. So I changed. So I went to an easier book. No way.
Okay.
At the end of 2 weeks, I went to the high school book called Moon Man and Otto. And that's what we used. The high school book that I used to teach in Ossining. That's the best they could do. And then I found out these were people, mostly black students, who came up for the summer. And they were sent, or they got money to come into Columbia.